Okay, back again. Too many movies. So we're going to do the usual thing. I've got so much to say, that's why I'm rushing. I'm going to tell you whether you should go see this film, and then a little bit, we'll have a break, talk about themes, and then spoilers. And today is a real treasure. It's the latest film from Guillermo del Toro, which is The Shape of Water. And I'm a big del Toro fan. Bit mixed, up and down, hated Pacific Rim, but going back to Pan's Labyrinth, those kind of films, from his early days, I've always loved him. So the quick answer is, should you see The Shape of Water? And that's a resounding yes. And a lot of yeses lately, but that's this time of year, I think, where you're getting some really interesting films. So go see it. We're going to have a break because we've got too much to talk about. Okay, bye. Okay, so now we're back. So let's talk about The Shape of Water. And to begin with, it's a fairy tale, but not a Disney fairy tale. This is a Del Toro, Grimm Brothers fairy tale, and it's just full of symbols and metaphor and blood and lust and salt water, and he goes to town. But he is a little bit more restrained. This isn't like Pacific Rim where he just throws everything in. We're really back to more Pan's Labyrinth kind of days. He really is able to bring his A game here. He's got an eye for an image, really helped with the cinematography by, and I don't know this guy's name, Dan Larson. Beautiful eye. You see green throughout the whole thing, whether it be a car, the punch cards they use, and obviously water, the apartment in which the girl lives. So the story is, it's 1963, it's a Cold War facility, height of madness within the American government about being taken over by communists, and they have gotten a high value asset, which turns out to be an amphibian man, and when you see it, it's obviously a homage to Gill-Man from The Creature in the Black Lagoon, and looks fantastic. And then parallel to this, we have the story of Eliza Esposito, played by Sally Hawkins, who's a cleaner. She's mute, and she's in every way the opposite of all the men running this facility. She's quite powerless, and as a fairy tale does, she falls in love, an impossible love, with this creature, and they have a relationship. And again, like in fairy tales, there are great rescues and daring do and bravery and loss, and the whole thing goes up to 11 by the end of it. So let's talk about how Del Toro does it. First thing is, the cast is just great for a real, in many ways, quite a small film. So Sally Hawkins plays Eliza Esposito, as I said. She's mute. It is an absolutely fantastic performance because Hawkins is a great actress anyway, but she has to use everything in her range, and especially her eyes, to direct how she is feeling. And also when she's signing, even the way she signs will show her mood, and you have to read how she feels in comparison to all these other people where she hasn't got dialogue. And it's really good. You watch this performance and you see how there were these great stars of the silent era who just were able to dominate through charisma and their face, in a Gloria Swanson kind of style. And she is fantastic and will definitely be nominated for an Academy Award, and she'll go damn close, I think. I still have a few films to see, but she's going to be really up there. Then you've got the great Michael Shannon. And I'm just laughing because every performance he does is really good, but this one's really high up on the intensometer. I mean, maybe the most intense Michael Shannon I've seen, and He is really, really good in this creepy kind of real, I don't know, just this 50s era conformity, but he's working in this weird place. Like, there are some clues as to, is this a little bit more supernatural than, is it more Hellboy than just a fantastique set in that 60s era? He is great. Then you go down the rest of the cast, and you've got Richard Jenkins plays Giles, who's this closeted gay guy, and he's the neighbour and helps Sally Hawkins. They both share a life together, which is quite sweet and becomes important over the length of the film. And her best friend is another cleaner there, played by Octavia Spencer. And finally, you have the great Michael Stuhlbarg, who, of course, is just in every film nowadays, and he's really quite good. It's not maybe the scene stealer like in Call Me By Your Name or some other films, but still pretty good. So you got this great cast. As I've said, the eye is fantastic for this film, beautifully shot. Doug Jones, I should give a call out, plays the creature. I don't think it's named. I think it's just Amphibian Man, something like that. He's really good. He's well known within the film community for being the guy that often is in these suits. He's a known gymnast and kind of performer who is able to bring to life these kind of creatures. And I think he was Lobster Man in the Hellboy films. So, he does what he does really well, but he's helped by the most fantastic prosthetics. I mean, they're really amazingly good. So you've got great cast, great people behind the scenes, quite an interesting little plot. I will say, I think it flags a little bit in the second act when they've set up this magnificent little role play which is going to go on when you're not quite sure how they're going to connect the dots. Then they have to do a lot of table setting before we get to the third act, and where then it all kind of goes off at pace. So it does flag there slightly for me, but generally this is a really, really good film. Let's get to spoilers, because there's tons I want to talk about, and although they're not spoilers, I don't want to ruin anything. So we'll talk then. Okay, so there are some spoilers which I'll talk about right at the end, but these aren't kind of like Soylent Green style spoilers. It's more, I don't want to ruin the film for anyone who hasn't seen it, and the kind of things I'm talking about run right through the entire length. So Del Toro is doing some interesting things with this film in that he has set up a world in which nearly everybody in this film has a double life. So you have Eliza Esposito, and she's a mute, so she lives both within the voiced and out of the voiced, and depending on how you interpret the ending, she might even be, not even human. Then you have the Giles, who's closeted gay guy living in a hetero world, especially in the 60s. You have Stuhlbarg's character, who is actually a double agent. You have Octavia Spencer's character, who's a black woman living in a white world. Everyone is trying to live these dual roles. But then you have Michael Shannon and the other high-ranking managers and generals, and they're all white, middle-aged guys, and it's their world. So what Del Toro is doing is he's making a connection between the Amphibian Man, who is considered other, and all the people in this world who are also other. To survive in this world, they have to be able to be adept at camouflaging themselves. And the other thing that they all really lack is a voice. Now with Eliza Esposito, he's made that in the foreground because she's a mute, but nearly everybody in the film can't speak as they normally would, whether it be Giles, who's as a closeted gay guy. The one time he speaks and shows his true feelings, he is put down by society. He is a little bit creepy in that scene, so I don't know what he expected, but yeah, generally everyone is told to be quiet. And in fact, Strickland, who is played by Michael Shannon, can't stand when the creature shrieks. And this goes so far as he doesn't like it when his wife speaks. And in fact, there's a sex scene, which is, we'll talk about later, there's a sex scene between the creature and Eliza, but that sex scene is really quite beautiful. I think it's the best scene in the whole film. But there's a sex scene earlier on between Strickland and his wife, which is really, normal. And he can't stand his wife speaking. She has to be voiceless for him to be potent. It's really disturbing. That sex scene is way more disturbing than, because on the internet everyone's going, oh, that's like bestiality and how could she be with an amphibian man? The sex scene between man and wife is much more. Del Toro is very subversive. He's getting his digs in wherever he can. So there's this real thing about not only do people, the other, have no voice, but even just their ability to speak and to say anything to power must be crushed. It cannot be withstood. And Strickland, as he descends into really almost insanity by the end, that even becomes more grating on him. And it's quite interesting how that plays over the whole thing. The other thing I notice is Del Toro does this thing that across the board, whether you're Russian agent or whether you're American, anyone who's in these really gung-ho positions, they're all eating candy. And Strickland does it all the time and even comments on it. But I noticed the Russian goon was doing it as well. And it's also a thing, I think he's going, it's really childish. And I think he's saying these men, they're not fully formed. They're kind of man babies who are wielding enormous power and they don't really know what they're doing. So we have all this mixing together in a most beautiful film. So Del Toro's really having his cake and eating it too. He's making this beautiful fairy tale and then you scratch away and there's a lot going on. The most beautiful scene by far in the whole film, which really moved me, is it is a sex scene, and this sex scene is very different, in which, and it's also completely ridiculously fantastical, and it's where Eliza stops up, like using towels, her bathroom, and floods the whole bathroom, which obviously is impossible, and she has this, well, it's really making love because there's nothing gross about it, and it's almost like ballet. They're in the water, and it's just got beautiful green kind of sheen through the whole thing, and it's just ridiculously beautiful. This film is really, really interesting, really good. I think it's going to go very far in the award season. Now I want to talk about one of the things which I think I've not seen anyone talk about, which is interesting, and it's a thing which, if you're watching this and you're into films and books and literature, it's the unreliable narrator. Now, this film begins, it's a fairy tale, and it begins with a narration, voiceover by Richard Jenkins as Giles, in which he's setting up that this is a fairy tale, in the beginning, this happened. And the interesting thing about that is, once you have set up that Giles is the narrator, when you get to the end of the film, there is a scene in which it all goes down. Strickland, through his obsessiveness, has tracked down Eliza and the Aquaman and is now going to kill them. And he shoots them. It's quite a shocking scene. And but we know that the aqua creature can kind of use powers of healing, so you're kind of thinking that's what's going to happen. And he does heal himself, kills the bad guy, Strickland, and then he attempts to heal Eliza and dives into the water with her. Under the water, he gives her the breath of life, and the scars, which were always put forward as maybe the explanation for her being a mute, open. And somehow it's prefaced that they'll be able to live their life together underwater. So there's a couple of ways you can go here. It could be that Eliza Esposito she was found in an orphanage near a river. Maybe she's a hybrid of these creatures, and because she was always on land, she just, did the lung thing, because they talk about how the creature can shift from lungs to gill breathing, and now he's opened her gills. Or two, he's done some sort of magic, something by him breathing into her. He's got this ability. There's a whole thing we could talk about about biblical imagery. They talk about Samson and Delilah, the film going on in Del Toro's magical Orpheum is Samson and Delilah. Oh no, it's the Song of Ruth. That's right, Song of Ruth. And there's a clear thing where he talks about the imagery of God, and even at the end he says, "You are a god," which kind of would blow his mind because he has a very clear image of God as a male, white male. And so after all this happens, they go into the water, and then the voiceover begins, and it's Giles talking about what has just occurred, and then he reads a beautiful poem, which I can't do justice to. And now there's no way Giles could know any of this, and I think you could argue that really in a Del Toro fairy tale, the two have dived into the water, and Eliza actually does not make it. She drowns, and really the creature tries to keep her alive. He's been shot, but it looked like he healed, so he might be okay. But he's from a river, he's in the ocean now, it's different salinity. You could see how Del Toro, again, has designed a thing where he gets his cake and eats it too. You get the fairy tale ending, but is it actually real? Because we only can take Giles' word for it, and he cannot see what is happening underwater. This is a really, really good film. It's a real film for film buffs, because what Del Toro has done is he's taken really two horror tropes, or fairy tale horror trope. He's taken like the creature of the Black Lagoon and flipped it, where instead of everyone trying to kill the creature because it's after a woman, the woman is after the creature, or at least it's an equal relationship. And also Beauty and the Beast, and not the Disney version, the real version, in which it's really, reversed, in that at the end, the beast is saving the beauty rather than beauty saves the beast. So I think there's a little bit more to this film. Del Toro is really playing with some stuff, and I found it just really enjoyable film to watch. Just even if you weren't a big film buff and you went with a couple of people, they could enjoy this film just for the sheer sensuality of the images. It's really just a treat for the senses. So that's it for today. As I said, tons more films coming. Please subscribe if you like my stuff. You hit the bell, you'll always know when I do a review, and I'm on Twitter at Guru Eden. I'll see you very soon. Okay, bye.